we think we have to be better than men. We have to sell ourselves better. That's the point.
Learn to play the game. In other words, I'm rephrasing
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
said. Learn to play the games like men play it. Learn to market your activity exactly like men do. Welcome to the Natural Born Leaders podcast, the place where women's leadership and experiences in organizations take center stage. My name is Shirley Azar, a former senior procurement manager, a lecturer, and mentor for women leaders. In each episode, we dive into the challenges and triumphs that women managers face in the workplace. We share inspiring stories about overcoming gender biases, discuss the complexities of balancing career and motherhood, and explore how maternity leave can serve as an opportunity for career growth. Here you will find practical tools from senior managers and HR experts who will guide us on how to promote and support women in the workplace. Alongside authentic female experiences, we shed light on what it truly means to navigate organizations as women. Together, we are building a community that helps women advance into senior roles and become part of decision-making processes in organizations. And this morning, I have the honor to host on my podcast Martina Kolb-Pieper, who worked her whole career in technical environments and started to build a network for technical female leaders in an international company of which the headquarters is based in Germany. Hello, Martina. Good morning.
Hello, Charlie. Good morning.
It's a big honor for me to host you. You are my first guest who is not an Israeli manager, but rather someone from another country. So I'm really excited about our conversation today because I feel we have heard stories from Israeli managers. Some of them manage teams also in other countries, but this is the first time that we have a guest from Germany. So I'm really excited. How about you this morning?
I'm fine. I'm really excited for the story to tell what we are doing at the moment, and it's always good to spread the news. So I
Yeah.
like this opportunity very much. Thanks.
Great, great, Martina. So let's really start with the issue of cultures, okay? Because this is the most interesting thing for me while talking to someone from another country. I was wondering, how does the cultural environment in Germany influence the way women are perceived as leader, especially in operational roles where you are focusing your network that you are building, also your work with younger female leaders.
I think the culture in Germany is still a little bit old white man. Depending where you start, I'm not really sure if she has a skill set and maybe she should stay at home and or can she really deal with technical problems? So it's still this a little bit we don't believe that she can do that. And there's a lot the young ladies have to overcome the hurdles not only, let's say, how they grew up in their families, but also in the working environment.
So do you think this you talked about internally for women, the women themselves, about the challenges to believe they can do it, so they have the right skills and the right let's say abilities, which is a common challenge because we see it also in Israel. Women are practically taught as young children to have smaller belief in themselves. So this is something that culturally we face all around, I think. But I was wondering about the society, like the external powers, let's say the men in the work environment. Do they believe in women? How do they perceive them, especially in Germany, but also maybe in other countries where you operate?
I think it's still not white or black. There are some gray zones, and there are also some zones where everything is really, really good. For example, I started at an English company. At our site in Germany, we had two big businesses. One business was a little bit more led by the English people, and the
Mhm.
other business was led by the German people. And I had my interviews, and the funny thing was, I was only interviewed by the English part of the company. I was
Okay.
never interviewed by the German part of the company. And they were looking on both sides for a chemist. So that was the first thing I realized, oh, there's a difference. And then during my career, it was never ever a question, oh, you are female. Yes. No, no one really cared about it. It was about your what you can bring to the table. And I was
Mhm.
always sitting at the table. That was an important thing. But on the German side of the business, so to say, it was always different. It took, I think, more than 20 years before they hired a lady.
Wow,
Yeah,
really? It
yeah.
is so surprising to hear because, we have this concept, or let's say perception of Germany as being a very modern, liberal country. So if you had asked me, I wouldn't say there should be any difference between the English side, let's say, and the German side. How do you explain it?
I think it's ingrained in a lot of people still in Germany. For example, I was very lucky because my grandfather already was, let's say a feminist. He was a mining engineer and he had two daughters, and he said, you have to go to university or you have to learn this and this and this, and you will be free. So my mother was already a textile engineer.
Ah,
So
wow.
and so at my home, we are three girls and one boy, and I'm the oldest. There was never ever a question that we can't do what we want.
Wow. This
So
is
there
so
were never,
important. Yeah.
yeah. So I was never faced with that at home. I was faced with that at school, of course. Sometimes I realized, okay, boys can do more than the girls, but I never really took it seriously. Starting my career, I realized that some of my friends, they were asked questions in interviews, job interviews about, oh, do you have a partner? Do you plan to become pregnant? And I said, whoever wants to ask me that will never get an answer. It's not their business. So
Yeah.
it's also a little bit how you stand for yourself and how you're
Yeah.
brought up. And I
Yeah.
think it's still in Germany at that time it was that okay, girl, yeah, you can go to university, but it's more for looking for a good husband.
Wow. Is it even legal in Germany to ask this question? Because in Israel,
Yes,
it's no
yeah,
longer legal. Ah,
it
yeah,
is
it is
still
still legal? Wow.
it's still legal. It's not for really forbidden. And in the UK, it was always forbidden. No one really
Mm.
asked me, okay, do you have a partner? Do you plan to have kids or stuff like that? No, it's
Yeah.
they don't ask that.
Yeah, definitely. Also in Israel, even though it's not legal anymore, some organizations still ask that, and it depends, like you said, on the women themselves. Do they know how to draw the boundary and say
Yeah,
this is an irrelevant question?
yeah,
And I think also it's a good sign for women where they shouldn't work because
yeah.
once you are asked that in an interview, it means that the mindset of the organization is to always look at women differently than they look at men. And this is not a good starting point for anyone, right?
No, not at all, not at all. And so I worked for this company 17 years, and then I worked in the US and came back and worked again for a subsidiary of my former company.
Yeah.
I was always in an environment where female were equal to male.
Yeah.
You of course you had to prove your value,
Of course.
but it was not nothing. You can't do it because you're a female. And even when I was pregnant, my boss was very open. When I talked to him and say, "Oh, I'm pregnant," he said, "Okay," and I said, "Yeah, I want to work." After that, yeah, we will figure that out. We will find something. And he was really really good. So that was always good.
Great. And I
Uh,
want to ask you, Martina, what are the proportions between men and women in the operational fields where you focus your work on?
Now in the German company, the proportion is very, very low. We do have
Wow.
businesses, big businesses, they do not have female technical leaders. Neither
Wow.
neither in operation nor in the engineering. They do have, of course, they are not not stupid. They do have PhD people in R&D, but very often these PhD people do not have direct reports. So they are not getting leadership experience. And so they can't advance their career because they can't try and figure out how can I work as a leader, how I'm doing as a leader, because you need experience to grow to become a good leader.
Yeah, definitely. So it
Yeah.
it sounds like you're very far from, let's say, 50-50 ratio, right?
Yes, we are.
Was that part of the motivation for you to initiate the network that you started?
It was very specific for the company I'm working now because this company is a family business.
Yeah.
It's 175 years old. And when I joined this company 11 years ago and came as production manager, I thought, oh my God, I'm stepping 30 years back in history. It,
Wow.
it, it was so amazing, negative amazing, what the expectation was. Oh, you are female. Oh no, you can't have any clue what we are doing here. We can't trust you. oh, you have to behave like a man. You know, this very old thing, oh, you have to shake hands. I said, no, I'm sorry. I was never growing up in an environment where I have to shake hands to all my operators. When I was production manager, I had 360 operators working for me. I greeted them, but I didn't do the handshake to everyone. But here it was expected. You have to do the handshake. And I said,
What,
no, I'm
every
not.
day? Every time you meet them?
Every day, every time you meet them.
Oh,
And I
wow.
said, I'm sorry, no,
Why?
I'm not, I'm not doing that. So this expectation was you have to behave like a man. And I said, I'm
Yeah,
not a man. I have my way to deal with people.
yeah,
But it was not really understood. And I was really shocked to see that that is all still happening in some of the companies. It's not so that Germany is backwards in all the areas, but in this specific family company, it's a big
yeah.
company. They have 50,000 people all over the world, and they have 11 billion revenue. So
Wow.
it's a big company.
I want to ask you, sorry for cutting you. I was wondering while you described the company, it sounds like it's a very successful company. It's very big. It's obviously spread around the world. But the reality of how women are perceived there makes me think about what is the percentage of women in higher management there? Are there any women in key positions? Are they a big part of decision making in such a company?
Uh, yes and no. So Germany decided on a law to say, okay, we have to work with quotas, and they decided that every highest board
Hmm.
in a company has to have 20% female. And
Okay.
the board at our company, the company leading board, they were three men, and just let's say 1 month before the law was public, they said, "Oh, maybe we need a woman." So they put in a fourth position, and that is a lady,
One lady and three men.
one
So,
lady and three.
so the law is just requires let's say a representation, or does it also require let's say a ratio, a specific ratio of how many
It,
women?
I think no, it's a ratio. It's 25%,
Okay, so they
25%.
exactly met the ratio.
Yes, they did. They did.
Yeah.
And who, of course, a lot of people say, okay, oh yeah, she's there because of the law.
Mm,
And her power is she's doing HR. Sometimes HR can be very powerful in our company. HR is not the powerful decision
yeah,
maker.
yeah.
And then we have 11 businesses underneath. And in a lot of the top management of the different businesses, there are no females at all.
Wow.
In some of them, they're starting now to have females. So it's a little bit of a mixed box of pictures.
Wow.
But
You know,
very,
when you said there are almost no females there, so it felt like it's almost heartbreaking for me to hear that it still exists. But you know, I this is a reality. I also know from 22 years in traditional industry, also in Israel, and I know this reality very well, and it is so unfortunate because I think the worst thing that happens is that the businesses themselves, the companies themselves, are damaged by not having women there in the decision making tables. We know it from our personal experience, but we know it also from researchers that show how well companies do when we have diverse teams making decisions for the companies, right?
yeah, definitely. And what you also can see is it's still this mindset. Okay, female can be good in accounting. They are also in HR. We do have HR department. They are only female, which is also not good, as we both know, because the mix is the best, not
Yeah,
having one gender only.
yeah,
So in accounting, in HR, and also in some areas in R&D, you will find a lot of female,
yeah,
very rare in leading positions. And in operations, there are not a lot of female leaders. And that has to do with the old-fashioned how we think women can deal with operators in an, let's say, manufacturing environment.
yeah. Yeah, I totally understand. It's also, I think, very, very true for traditional companies here in Israel. We see that on the, let's say, on the manufacturing lines, you see mostly men. both as operators, both as managers. So the women presence there is very, very small. And I think some women may also fear handling such, let's say, a population, to manage such a population of working, manufacturing people, because mostly the education level there is very low and they perceive women as maybe irrelevant to their field. So tell me, how do you find this challenge? It sounds from the outside, it sounds like one of the biggest ones, right?
Oh,
So
yeah,
how do you see it?
that's the biggest challenge, and that also the reason why I separated and I said, okay, not separate, but we do not accept admin ladies in our team. And some of the ladies ask me, okay, I'm in accounting. Why can't I be in your technical leader training, or it's not a training, but in your network? And I said because you are not facing that your majority of people are not well educated. You are
Yeah,
not facing the situation that you have the highest education and you are dealing with men of very low education. There is a total different acceptance, as you said. For example, when I was production manager and I became production manager, I think in 98,
mm,
the relation of how many females in my reporting line, so to say, I think I had two ladies in the lab, and then I had 340 men. And I
wow.
was the only lady. I had a lot of peers, I have to say. There were a lot of peers in our organization, but in the strict operation, there were only male. And people were asked me, "Oh, how did you deal with that?" Or also my supervisor were, "How is it to have a female leader?" And they said, "We are very proud of her. We know she knows the business because I grew up in R&D. I knew everything."
Yeah.
And you can't lie to her. She knows what, and she's standing for you. That was very important. She's
Yeah,
standing for you if something is going wrong.
yeah,
And what I can see now, and that was the reason why I started this network a little bit, also our company and other companies, they feel the pressure, oh, we have to put females more on the, let's say, looking places where they can be seen.
yeah.
And what they do, they pick potentials and they throw them into the shark pool because
Hmm.
they say, okay, oh yeah, you were in your little small R&D in your lab, and now you are dealing with operation. So you will become production manager of a small line.
Yeah,
They have no experience and they do not have a network how to deal with that because questions or behavior or how you do stuff in a purely manufacturing environment is totally different than in the office environment.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And also, as a manager, you mentioned two very important things, I think, and I want to emphasize them. You mentioned, first of all, you need to be on top of the, let's say, the professional material, because they, like you said, they cannot fool you. They cannot tell you lies. They cannot tell you stories. You know the material. And I think this is the key. You cannot. You have to prove. I think this is the first step when you enter such an environment. You have to prove that you know what you are standing for, because then no one doubts it. This is the first, let's say we come into such an environment with a big question mark. So is she good enough? Is she serious enough? Usually we will get like looked down at, and then I think we need first of all to prove we are equals or more, but we are at least equal to you in our
Yeah.
knowledge and expertise. So this is one very important message you mentioned. And the second one was, how do we behave as managers? And I think backing our employees is number one. Let's say the number one thing we should all do as managers, men and women both. We should support and back our teams. Without this backup, I think there's no, let's say, what is the meaning of being a manager, right? We need to
Yeah.
take the responsibility. We need to back them and handle whatever we need
Yeah.
from the outside or the hierarchy. So I think I fully agree with these two key points. I want to ask you, how do you teach? Let's say you have this network that you build. You will tell us a bit more about it in a minute. But when let's say you accept a woman who is about to be promoted to, let's say, a production line manager, she's only had an experience in the office or in the R&D lab. So what is the process? How do you prepare her for the Shark Tank? How did you call it, the Shark Tank? So how do you prepare her? What kind of process is she going through?
maybe I have to explain a little bit how our network
Yes, please
uh,
go ahead.
is starting. We are, as I said before, it's not a leadership training. It's more that we look into our wonderful workday to check, okay, where do we have females who are already, they have to be in technical environment and they have
Yeah.
direct reports and they
Okay.
maybe they will make a career there, but nevertheless, there's a group of females. Sometimes they have peers, but sometimes they're totally alone in male environments. So
Okay.
we group them. We always try to find 6 ladies for one team. And what we also do is we try not to have them from the same place. So
Okay.
because we want, if they are from the same place, they already have sometimes their coffee table meetings or they go to together to the canteen, for example, if they're at the headquarter. Headquarter is around 5,000 people in
Oh,
Vietnam. So
wow.
it's a big one. All the
Yeah.
businesses are there. So
Yeah.
there's a good possibility of exchange, let's say on the more private life. We made a mistake by putting together our first team. It was a two German team, too many ladies from the same area, and they said, "Oh, we don't need this network. We do have ourselves." And we had a lot. It was really hard to get to them to give them the understanding. It's about, nevertheless, you have you as a team, but you're not talking about professional things, and that what we
Yeah.
want to do. So we choose a group of 6 ladies. And then we have a kickoff meeting with them and we tell them, okay, we want to talk to you about challenges you face. And we want to give you the opportunity to present a case that is important to you to
Mm-hmm.
the team, to use the
Yeah.
team as a peer coaching. So
Okay.
that's more or less. And of course, with then you have discussion and sharing experience. And I tell a lot of stories out of my life, but they also it's more about let's say I'm um,
Facilitator.
the facilitator and I'm also the nursing at the nurse at the beginning, but I want to bring them into life and I want to bring them in a good team spirit so that they asked if they have a problem, they call their peers from the team.
Yeah, I think, wow. I want to say, first of all, it sounds wonderful because I think networking for women is one of the best and most powerful tools for them to, let's say, strengthen their careers. And I think the power of what you are, let's say, building there, structuring there, is that it goes with them along their career. So they are not dependent on you. Let's
Yes.
say in a few years' time, when they still have their women, the friends and peers to support
Yeah.
them and advise them, and the cycle grows because you introduce more and more women, so the network grows. And I think this is a wonderful initiation, and it is truly a way for us as women to, let's say, discuss challenges. First of all, to see we are not alone, we are not the only ones facing them. This is such a big power to see that everyone faces them, and then learn from each other what is the best way, what works best from the experience, the mutual experience that everyone has.
Yeah.
So this, it really sounds great. And I want to ask you, what differences do you see, let's say, cultural differences? Because you have women in, let's say, in the 6 of them, let's say you take one from each country or some sort of
Mm.
a division like that. So what major cultural differences do you observe over time?
Oh, that's very interesting. Let's say my lifespan was I was working for an international company. I had a lot of international teams I was working in, and I lived in the US for several years.
Yeah.
So I have a broad experience that people are different. That is very important because you have to be open for European is not European is not European. So so in our skip the first German group, but we will come to that later. So we had the second was an MER team. We had 2 ladies from Spain. We had one lady from South Africa,
Mhm.
one from Czech Republic, and one from Italy, and one from Slovenia. So it was former East Europe, or still East Europe, Spain, Italy, and South Africa. And
Wow.
all of them
An
brought something,
interesting mix.
yeah, all of them brought something different to the table. And also with the lady from South Africa, She is from, I think her former ancestors are from Pakistan.
Wow.
So we also have the race issue, not the issue, but the race already within the team.
Yeah, it is an issue, no, because
Yeah,
it has an impact on how one perceives other people,
yeah,
how they perceive the work, the relationship. Yeah, it has an
yeah.
influence.
What the first step we have to do, and I'm always working with an HR lady together, so we are teaming up, helping each other because you have to be very focused. The HR lady is giving me a little bit of the background and the help to create all the presentation, all the stuff, and I'm doing the more or less the work during the meeting we have.
Yeah.
You have to create a safe space. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That is a commitment. That's a very important commitment. And therefore we say we will visit with this team for 1 year. So we have a kickoff, we have meetings in between, and then we have a final meeting. And of course, what we hope is that they grow together as a
Yeah.
team and that they will always go to this team if they have a problem. And we will have a coming together meeting next year where we will bring all the teams we
Other teams
already have
together.
all together.
Yeah. How
Bec-
many teams have already gone through this process?
At the moment, one team has finished and we have 5 active teams.
Wow, great,
Yeah.
great. I think
And
one of the powerful things that is also associated with your work is that you are creating more and more role models for other women to see. Like,
yeah,
we always say we cannot be what we cannot see.
yeah,
So younger women within the large organization can see, okay, so I see them, they are more, let's say, once they go through this process, they are much more confident, they are much more, I'm sure they are much more visible in their presence in the workplace. So they are much more vital as role models for other women. So this is also a great result for such
yeah.
a work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's also one plan. We try to make them as, let's say, ambassadors to our CEO, who is, or not the CEO, CTO, the technical office, who
Mm.
is championing our effort, is of course very interested in having more females in the organization. So he wants us to make Freudenberg to be seen as, oh, this is a good workplace also for ladies, and you can
Yeah.
have a technical career. It's not only you go to university, you have your engineering degree, and then it's done. No,
Yeah.
here you can use it and you can make a career. So that's why he's supporting us to do this. And we will also go to Asia toward the end of the year. Asia, I have to say I'm a little bit not worried, but it's a totally different culture. We have to be more.
Which countries in Asia?
It's China, it's Taiwan, India, and
Yeah.
you can't put them in one box. So
No, you cannot. Yeah, but I
yeah,
think that in China, I've had employees for working for me in China, and also I've worked with so many Chinese vendor along the years. So I think China and I think also Vietnam is a place where it's very acceptable for women
yeah,
to lead. So I think
yeah,
it's a lesser problem for me. But I think India, depending
yeah,
on the company, India can be a big challenge because
yes,
I've
yeah,
had Indian managers for about 8 years in my career. It was a very male dominated,
yeah,
let's say, company. Not all of them, by the way, are the same, but I assume
yeah,
that since this is the traditional industry again.
correct.
So, yeah, so there I can tell you from my personal experience, it was very difficult for me to be a senior manager and feel that they respect me because they did not. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter, and it had nothing to do with my expertise, with my experience. They basically told me in my face when I came to visit them in India and we had meetings and everything. They told me you should be at home with your small child. I had a baby back then. He was I think 1.5 years old, and they tell me we don't understand why you left him at home. You should be with him. They didn't, and they also told me, one of the funniest sentences was, women are only good for negotiating in the market. They can buy tomatoes. I was a
oh,
procurement manager. Negotiation was my life, okay? And it is also a man, like it is perceived as a man environment as well, even though I think women are so much better in negotiation than men. But or they have It's not fully correct. I think women bring to the negotiation skills that men are less able to bring, and it's a big power in negotiation. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be good or bad, but I think it's an additional power that we bring to the
Yeah.
negotiation. So I can tell you, for me, it was really, really unpleasant. I was always the only woman in any
Mm.
kind of meeting with them. There were many men and me, and they were always disrespectful. And it's not just being the best that you can be. You also need to be able to behave, or let's say fully express yourself when you know no one respects you in the room. It's a really, really big challenge. I think India, out of all the places you mentioned, India might be the, let's
Yeah.
say, the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And for us, it's also, and that's the part I'm not fearing, but I have a little bit of a mixed feeling. So if we have Chinese ladies, Indian ladies, Pakistan ladies, and maybe Vietnam or Korean in one team, I have to be very careful because that you have this society, you have the caste system, you have the
Yeah,
political system. So how do I bring them together to a common ground? That is more so a little bit how to figure that out. So, but that will happen. We will have from the Asian HRP department because there I need more support. But
yeah,
coming back to the networks we already started. So as I said, we have six. The German one was our guinea pig. We tried to figure out how to do it. And so in hindsight, we would say, okay, we should have done things a little bit different. Maybe then we would have gotten them a little bit more to understand because they always said to us, oh, why can't we have men in this team? And we always, that's not the purpose. That's not the, why do you want to have men? So that was funny. So then having the first European team, as I mentioned, the two, and the first thing they said was, oh, we're waiting for this for 10, 15 years. Thank you that you're starting it. So, and they were very open and we realized, okay, the peer coaching is very important, but it's
Yeah,
also very important to talk about challenges. So we changed a little bit the way how we're doing it. So we made, with them, we went so studies and they say, okay, these are studies showing, okay, these are the challenges ladies have to face being in a work environment and maybe more being in a technical environment.
yeah,
And so we asked them, okay, what are the challenges you can relate to? What have you seen? What do you think is a challenge? And what kind of strategies do you think we could work on? And then we dig deeper into it and say, okay, what are the challenges you as a team wants to work on? And we said we will set up onto three challenges, and which is the first one. And we did this then later with all the other teams, with the second and third team also, with the third and fourth team, then also as a starting point. So we started with that instead of starting with the peer coaching. So to get a more common ground. Oh, that's why we are here. That's why we want to
yeah,
talk about. We want to help you. And we segregated in, okay, what can we ask the company to do to be able to overcome these challenges,
yeah.
and what can we do as a team?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, when you mentioned that the teams themselves choose what challenges to focus on. So what normally do they choose? The internal challenges? Because at the beginning we talked about internal challenges for us as women and also the external ones. So where normally do they choose to focus as a team?
The main thing they focus on is, after we said, okay, let's put aside what the company could provide.
Yeah,
It's more on personal challenges.
personal
Okay,
challenge.
it's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I never had the imposter syndrome, I have to say, but
Wow. So you are the exceptional, Martina. You know that, right? All of
I
us have it. All of us.
no,
It
no, no,
doesn't
not all
matter.
of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
99% of us have it. Even if it's for, it's for 5 minutes when you
yes, of
you
course.
doubt yourself and you say, well,
Yeah,
maybe they will catch on that I'm not really so
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's always
yes.
this voice, this small voice inside of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has this, I think everyone has this small voice in it. My voice is not very loud, I have to say.
Great. Yeah.
I'm very self-confident. And if I'm not
Yeah.
self-confident, no one will see it.
Great. And I think you should really thank your grandfather and the
Yeah,
way you were brought up, because this is
yeah,
the main key for that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And when we talk about this, because a lot of ladies don't know the name imposter
Yeah,
syndrome. So, but when we talk about it and explain, okay, realize there is a job offer, and what you do normally if you look at the job offer and you're interested, or you say, oh, I can do this, I can do this. No,
yeah.
I can't do
Looking
this,
for
I can't do.
100%.
So,
Yeah,
so
100% match. Yeah,
yeah, what we tell them is, okay, if a male match 60%, he will go for the job offer.
yeah.
And the lady has to, in her mind,
In our mind.
minimum
Yeah.
80 to 85%
Yeah,
it's a match.
researchers show that women aim for about 100% of a match. Even we see
Yeah,
one criteria we don't fully meet.
yeah,
Yeah, this is, it's astounding to hear you describing this because we face it every day here in Israel with managers and with women in general, not just for managerial roles. And we don't understand how much power we have with our experience and our skills, which are unique. And we don't understand this is much more meaningful to the employer than one line he wrote in the description that may or may not be relevant to the job. So
yeah.
it's amazing that it's a worldwide, let's say, perception of women.
It's funny. And when I realized that, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's funny. Why is that? I
Yeah.
never had this really feeling that I can't. It's something like I'm in the auditing, let's say, not industry, but I'm with ISO auditing since 89. So my whole life I was audited by ISO and all this quality and
Mm-hmm.
HSE and stuff like that. And I said,
Yeah.
one day I said, okay, I don't care who is coming and asking me. I can lead every audit and I can make my way through. I will find out, even if we don't cover that, we will find a way.
Yeah, of course.
So it's experience and being self-confident. And I think that's what missing a lot. And that has something to do with the upbringing because it's always said we have to be better than men. No, that's not true. We don't need to be, we think we have to be better than men. We have to sell ourselves better. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's not the result has to be, or need to work more. No, we
Yeah.
have to
Wow. Wow.
sell
Wow.
ourselves better.
Yeah, this is like I want to stop because this is a great sentence and I want to stay with this.
Yeah.
It's an interesting comment that you just made and I think it's very powerful because there is a perception that we need to be excellent in order to be aligned, let's say in the organization with good men. What we need to be excellent in order to be recognized in a similar level because men, it's okay for them to be good. I have to say, I've seen men that are not even very good
Yeah.
throughout their careers and they got promoted and got to very high, let's say, positions and it didn't affect them. But women, they need to be on top of their game. And I think what you're saying here is super interesting because you're saying, learn to play the game. In other words, I'm rephrasing
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
said. Learn to play the games like men played. Men are
Yeah.
not so good all the time but
Oh,
they know how to present themselves and I will add to that they know how to market their activity within the organization and this is something I always teach women that I work with. Learn to market your activity exactly like men do because whenever they take on a challenge, they take on a new mission, everyone who is relevant to something in the organization will know about it and they will make sure that they are compensated for it and we as women do not do it enough. So I
yeah.
think what you're saying is really powerful, and I totally agree. We need to learn how to sell and market our activity and sell ourselves and promote ourselves and invest the time and efforts in marketing ourselves within the organization, but also in the industry, not just within our small organization. We need to learn to do it publicly so we get recognized, so we get opportunities outside the company where we are working currently. I think this is the best message we can give women all over the world apparently and not just in the countries we know. To first of all be work on their self-confidence, which is the basis, and then fake it if you have to, learn how to sell your activity, learn how to
Yeah.
market yourself. So become more like the men colleagues you see. I think it's a good idea to learn from them what works for them. And I think we should adopt some of their, let's say, behaviors. And Martina, I want to ask you, we are nearing the end of this episode. And I think it was very, very interesting to see how the narratives, let's say, and the challenges that women face are not limited. They are not limited to specific countries. They are not limited to specific races. Or I think we have common grounds all over the
Yes.
world. I think it's a bit of unfortunate also because I was hoping that, let's say, women somewhere on this planet do not have to face these challenges.
What I would say now, having seen all these different groups, is that there are several factors they have to tick to work. So it's your upbringing,
Yeah.
and therefore your how you see yourself in the world. What is my place in the world? And my place in the world was always I can do whatever I want. Then having the first good boss enabling you. I think these three factors are very important how you grow in your career and never back down because something is not right. For example, when I made my PhD, my professor really hated me and we had not a good relationship.
Wow.
And he tried to disgrace me. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And
Because
stand.
you were a woman, or it was like a personal chemistry that didn't work?
It was not because I was a woman, I have to say
Ah,
that. It had
okay.
nothing to do. It was because of my personality and his personality.
Ah, okay.
I didn't back down when he wanted me to do stuff. And I said, no, I'm sorry. The molecules are not doing what you want them doing on the paper. So I'm sorry for that. No, it's more about standing your ground. And if you feel not handled right, you have to talk for yourself. And if you don't do that, if you don't learn how to do that, not a lot of things can help you.
Yeah, I want to. I think what you said is very important, and I agree with that. I want to add something to it. I want to say that even if you were not brought up in a way that gave you confidence, there is always room for improvement. I know many women that I work with as a mentor, and also women in my community and other women. We can work on that. We can improve it.
Correct.
We need to find a way how. Sometimes it will be independently, sometimes it would be through a mentor that you're working with, sometimes it will be with a good friend. It doesn't matter, but we need to find a way that is right for us. This is one comment I have. And you mentioned about one good boss. So I want to say that sometimes women will not meet this new boss, let's say the one good boss at an early stage. They may
Mm.
face it, let's say, later in their career. And I don't want them to wait for a good boss. I think that one of the things we need to do is be in charge of our career and not let it, let's say, just flow and let the years go by. This is a message I always tell women I know, and especially women that have worked for me. I always tell them, do not stay in this place just because it's convenient. And sometimes when we have small children in Israel, we normally have quite a lot of children compared to Europe. So the upbringing of children is a key factor in women's decision where to work. Okay, so they need the setting to be comfortable so they can pick the children up. So the hours need to be flexible and everything. So, but I always tell them this is not a good enough reason. You need to you need to look at your career and manage it like at least once a year. Look where you are, look where you want to be, and see does it serve you or not. And it's okay to decide that you want to stay in this, let's say, in this company at this position for the next 2 years until your children are a bit bigger. It's okay, but decide it. What I see around me, and it's interesting if you also see it around you, that most women, or I don't know most, a lot of women do not manage it. They just let it happen for them. And I think it's a big difference of the power that we take on our, and let's say the control we take over our lives. Do you see similar behaviors also from where you are standing?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think you said something very important. It's not necessary that let's say, the 3 points I said have to be in place. The most important thing about everything is you have to realize that you are your own boss and you have some kind of your fate in your own hand. Yes,
Yeah,
of course, even if you are really good and even everything is good, career can fail. But that's a different story. Then you don't need to blame yourself. I didn't do anything for it. So you
yeah,
have to make decisions. You can't always wait for other people making decisions for you. And something you mentioned was very important. If you realize that you need some support, look for a coach, look for a mentor, look
yeah,
for a peer group.
yeah.
Oh, look for people you can talk about this without being judged. And I
Yeah.
think that's most important, that they can give you some help, how to some different perspective. Very often we are turning in our own problem the whole
Yeah.
time. We don't see anything, how to get out of it. And then you talk to someone and then some, oh yes, that's it.
Yeah, it's the fresh perspective of someone
Yeah,
else. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
It's very powerful. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree. I
yeah,
totally agree. And I think that it's so inspiring that you get to be this facilitator of such an important network in Germany and also all around the world. First of all, I want to thank you for your activity because I think it has so much potential to help women, the ones that you are working with directly, but also many other women who see
yeah.
this activity from the outside and do not take part of it, but it influences them and it
Yes.
helps them and it gives them inspiration. So thank you in the name of all women who are working for other women. So I really appreciate it. And I hope that you succeed and you grow your network in a remarkable pace. And I wish you a lot of success and a lot of support from the CEO. I hope that he also recognizes the impact that you are
Oh yeah.
making.
Yeah. He's very happy with the program. So he's supporting us in a
Great.
good way.
Wow, wonderful. So, Martina, it was really a pleasure for me to speak to you and to learn more about your activity and about your experiences. It's really a true pleasure, and I hope that we can maybe later on do something together for
Yeah.
women
Yeah.
worldwide.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too for inviting me. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Great, great. I'm so happy. Thank you. That's all for today's episode of Natural Born Leaders. I hope you find points of connection, insights, or tools that can assist you in your personal and professional journey. I invite you to share this episode with friends and let me know what resonated with you most or what you'd like to ask or hear about in future episodes. If you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to visit my website, send me a message, or even suggest yourself for an interview. Together, we'll keep building a strong community of natural born leaders, women supporting one another, growing and succeeding together. Thank you for being here and see you in the next episode.